how's it going, guys? This is Ryo Murata, photographer based in Tokyo. So this is going to be sort of like my first video on answering questions that my followers, subscribers have asked over the course of a year. In my previous video, I've sort of like mentioned in the end of the video, if you guys have any questions related to film, digital, I do it full time, or any kind of topic because I live in Japan and stuff like that, I will be making a video on that topic when I sort of like answer all of your questions. And fortunately enough, out of all the subscribers, only one person actually asked me a question, which is really long actually, along with one of my friends who sort of asked me two questions. So I'm gonna try to answer three questions in this video. Hopefully it won't get too long, but I predict it's gonna be long. So the first question is actually by a person named Patrick Rosker. I'm sorry if I pronounced her name wrong, but he said a really interesting question where in an average role, how many do you consider worthy keepers or portfolio worthy shots? And how do you come to that conclusion? And this is a really nice question, really open-ended. And the answer, in my case, it depends. However, I shoot with a GW690 medium format camera, which only gets 8 shots per roll. My hit rate is roughly probably half that. So 4 shots out of 8, I personally think are worthy keepers. But there is a but. However, this number of half fluctuates significantly due to the fact that there's like only 8 shots, and depending on the lighting conditions, depending on when I'm shooting, where I'm shooting, outside or indoors, or this might also be affected significantly due to where I'm like shooting specifically, at what time frame actually, what kind of subject am I shooting? Am I shooting like a building? And also this also relates to the distance in between the main light source, the sun, and also the subject, if it's a building or if it's like a landscape photography in an infinity type of distance and stuff like that. And there's like so many like what I call attributes that can sort of significantly impact on that choice of being sort of like a portfolio worthy shot or not. Sorry, my mic's like not clamping right now. Okay, is it tight? Okay, so where was I? So yeah, so probably everyone started film photography with 35mm format. No matter what choice we make, we probably started film with 35mm before going into medium format. I started out with a Nikon FM, which broke down on me. I swapped it for the Nikon F3, which I currently use. And back then it was a great experience. However, over the course of the years, I realized that I'm shooting less than less shots. Like out of 36 exposures, there were days I only shot like 18 or maybe less than that. And I came to this conclusion that like scanning 35 negative, like film negatives, 36 exposures took way long time than I anticipated. And because I was like shooting less and less, I realized the great potentials if I shot with medium format, because I was realizing to this point where medium format, you get less shots, meaning that you have to be patient, you have to take your time and stuff like that. And I initially thought that would be the better option for me because I'm used to in a sort of like a slow-paced environment when I'm shooting outside and outdoors. So I basically like shifted away from 35 to medium format because there were like so much potentials lying before my eyes, you know. And 35mm, everyone uses it. It's ubiquitous and it's hard to like differentiate your like work with other people. So that's actually one of the reasons I swapped from the 35 to my medium format camera. At the same time, because medium format camera, typically there's like 3-4 formats. There's 645, 6x6, 6x7, and 6x9. Depending on your shooting style, you can basically choose one for the other, while one have benefits over the others, while others have different types of benefits and, you know, pros and cons and stuff like that. So I went with the GW690, which was the completely 180 degrees shift from 35mm because you get far less shots, but the cost per roll increases. However, you guys probably know the great thing about shooting with 6x9 is you only get 8 exposures. So if you mess up on one's bad, that's gonna burn a hole in your wallet and stuff like that. So it kind of matched my style of like shooting, and at the same time, it makes you want to constantly think about, like, is the exposure correct? Am I reading the light correctly on my light meter? I use it like 2-3 times before I do the final, like before I press the shutters and stuff like that. So this actually leads into answering that question, where because I take more precaution, like observing that scenery, I get better hit rates, fortunately enough, on the GW690. And it's one of those moments where you can't take that much risks, but at the same time, because you have less shots, the rewards are higher. It sounds ironic, but that's the truth from my experience. And I basically enjoy this sort of like way of shooting, just 8 exposures per roll. And when I'm done, I basically have to sort of like wind it back onto the film, stick it in a new film stock, which takes a long time. So that sort of like time it takes to like load one film in there after shooting one roll, you have to like keep in mind how I should like pace myself before moving to the next film. And unlike 35mm, where when we're done finishing, we can basically wind it really fast with that lever on the side of the camera, and once we can plop a new one in, and we can do that within like 2 minutes or so. While medium format, it takes more than 2 minutes. I have to sit down, I have to take off the paper wrapper, the plastic wrapper, and the metal wrapper, and stuff like that, and that takes a long time. So I guess, and what I get from that is I get like half that, so like 4 shots roughly in terms of keepers or portfolio worthy shots. But after I like shoot all my photos, get it scanned actually, and typically during this point I try to like take out all the dust from the image actually. And I basically do this to every single image that I have, because there is this chance that a bad photo might become good, because once you see all those photos and when you start thinking about that storyline, the start to the finish actually, there might be some of the photos that were really bad might end up going into the great folder that you just made in that sort of like specific date trip or something like that. And in my case, that 4 shots that you initially thought were portfolio worthy might become 5 or might become 6. And also in addition to that, this goes back on talking about the fluctuations actually. Like if you shoot more in the golden hours, you will get a better hit rate because the lighting is really good. Same for blue hour in the morning and stuff like that. So this like really fluctuates. And also after I sort of like culled the first time, I basically take 1 week off from editing that photo, basically work on a different video or work on different projects and stuff like that, to forget about what I shot 1 week before. And when I come back to that project that I worked 1 week ago, I can sort of like enter in a new fresh mindset that in the final task of culling them all together, there might be photos that were really good, but when you sort of like align them in a thumbnail, or if you like print like index prints and stuff like that, that photo might not look good as what you expected and stuff like that. So there's this plus and minus going on, and in the end you will sort of like learn more from the shots that you've taken. You have to observe more of the negatives and stuff and the shots and stuff like that. And this is the great thing about sort of like shooting with a film instead of digital, because digital we see it on a screen, but film we can basically see right here like what order did we shoot all those photos. The first roll I shot this, the second roll I shot this, third roll I shot this. And for me it's like really easy to sort of like organize through the film negatives than doing it on digital, because digital it's hard to sort of like organize them on screen and stuff like that. And I guess that's why there's this printing process where we print small indexes or postcard size prints, test prints, so we can sort of like rearrange them to like showcase what the eventual like story will be and stuff like that. It's like really hard to explain, but yeah, like I said, my sort of like hit rate is probably half out of the 8 exposures. And for 35, interestingly enough, my hit rate was actually lower, like portfolio worthy shots, because this is also the great thing about 35mm film photography and the bad part about film photography in the 35 realm is that you have so many exposures. You have 36 shots, right? So it's easy to get sort of like misguided. I mean, you might shoot too much of a specific subject and you did not like shoot other subjects besides that and stuff like that. While in my case, medium format gives you sort of like this sort of like consciousness that you have to sacrifice something in order to get something. I learned that in economics, actually, opportunity costs. And it's like really hard to explain, but it's like if you shoot with 35 or if you shoot with 645, you have the chance, you have the opportunity to shoot horizontal orientation, landscape orientations, or vertical, because 645 you get 15 shots, 35 you have 36 exposures. So you can basically, if you don't know which one might work, you can shoot vertically or horizontally, exact same location. However, GW690, you only have 8 shots, and if you do that, you lose 2 exposures, you're left with 6, which in my case, when I try to shoot a specific subject, I actually decide on that location. Should I shoot this in portrait or landscape? And it makes me want to think more. Like this location, previously I went to Tateyama Chiba. I'm 100% know that I'm not going to revisit this area. What are the costs of traveling there? What are the costs of sort of like, you have to weigh all those like sort of like factors, like probably 100% I'm not going to revisit this area because I'm too busy with my life making videos, content and stuff like that. So you have to like sacrifice that horizontal orientation shot or the vertical. Which one will I choose? And I basically have to choose that. And I guess that makes me want to become sort of like a critical thinker and stuff like that. I'm going so off topic, but by thinking more, implementing that to my sort of like shooting routine, I guess I get more better hit rates and stuff like that. So hopefully I answered your questions. I might have lost a lot of people, but yeah. So for the GW690, 8 shots, I get like roughly 4 shots worthy of a portfolio level shots, while 35mm I would say 1/3 of that, so like 12 shots or so I would consider portfolio worthy. But because there's like a lot of shots, it's harder to like choose from. It's like choosing your first Pokemon and stuff like that. So yes. Okay, so let the questions roll. So the second question is asked by a follower, Ian Egerton. I'm sorry if I said your name wrong, but I actually answered his question in the comments, unfortunately, but this is worth sharing with you guys because it's knowledge. So he said that there are film cameras like the Konica C35 where the manufacturer recommends a battery, which is the PX675 Mercury battery, which runs at 1.35 volts, and those batteries are unattainable and nowadays. And there are cameras out there that the manufacturer don't manufacture those types of like batteries and stuff like that. And because it's unattainable, the alternative to that is the LR44 and the SR44 battery, which run at 1.5 volts. And he sort of like but he questioned like, how should I meter for that? And also, what kind of effects does it have on the overall like metering of the system, the camera system and stuff like that? And unfortunately, I failed physics, so I'm not good at explaining things. But typically speaking, if you use a battery that's overpowered in a camera that the recommendation is lower, the final outcome is that you will get an underexposed image. And what I mean about that is that when you stick in the LR44, which in my case, I actually do that. I stick in the LR44 into the Konica C35. When I first started out shooting with it, I was getting underexposed image, and I talked with sort of like a camera old man from the camera store, and he said that you have to sort of like integrate that because the light meter is overpowered by 0.15 volts. That light meter is much more sensitive to light, and it will pick up additional readings from that. So let's say sorry, my mic just fell out of place actually. So what I'm trying to say is if the sort of like the reading is like 1/125th of a second, f11, ISO 100, Sunny 11 rule, Sunny 16 rule actually, and you get a perfect exposure, okay? What the camera will read it as would be like 1/125th f. Instead of f11, it will read it as f11, f16, sorry, ISO 100. And the camera thinks it's like reading it correctly, but because the power that's boosted from that battery is making the the meter act a little bit weird, you will get a sort of like an underexposed image, and the camera thinks it's right, but in reality it's not. So what I do is, for the Konica C35, there's actually a toggle switch where you can basically select the ISO dial, and you can shoot at ISO 100, and you can also shoot at ISO 50. So in my case, I basically turn it to ISO 50. So although it's underexposing by like I can't calculate 1/3 of a stop or something, but I'm selecting one stop under 100, which makes the camera think it's like in a dark environment, a bright environment. Actually, it kind of cancels out, and you get a stock speed type of film shootout type of result. But in addition to that, because film does extremely well when you overexpose, I basically do it for another stop, so ISO 25, and basically they'll just shoot it automatically, and the camera thinks that because it's sort of like really overexposed, it tries to like cut down on that and stuff like that. And I'm not sure about the opposite. If the battery is underpowered, probably the light meter will read less of that light, and you will get a super high overexposed image. So I never experienced that, unfortunately. And this battery topic is interesting, and he actually quoted in his comments that I should like talk about the various batteries that are used in film cameras. That might be an interesting topic to mention, actually. So hopefully I did not sort of like lose anyone, but that's my answer to my second question. Okay, so last question is a question that's not film related, unfortunately, and one of my friends actually asked me, are you going to upgrade to the X-T5? And I said I actually did. So probably, if you guys are new to my channel, you guys probably don't know what camera I use when I shoot video and when I shoot photos on digital system. I use the Fujifilm system. I use the X-T3 as my stills photo camera, and I use the X-T4 to record myself when I'm talking to the camera and stuff, because it has a flip out screen and stuff like that. But it's hard to explain, but I actually gonna roast Fujifilm for this, but the X-T4 is probably one of the worst cameras that I have ever used in my life. Sorry, Fuji. This video is not sponsored by Fujifilm or anything, but I can say what I want. The X-T4, in terms of photography, it's the worst camera because it's big, it's bulky, and it's heavy, and the flip out screen does not make any sense unless you're doing something like talking to yourself in this situation. That's the only time it's usable, actually. And this is a weird topic, actually, because typically photography cameras used to be like Leica made rangefinders where the the viewfinders is on the a little bit left from the lens itself, and the Japanese manufacturer innovated and sort of put the pentaprism on the the top portion of the camera, because that's much more efficient. You can see what you get, while Leica's and the GW690, you basically have to sort of like predict what the right bottom corner is because the lens is like blocking and stuff like that. So I mean, and this X-T4 from Fujifilm doesn't make any sense because the LCD is on the left side, way on the left side, and if you're doing photography, or if you come from a photography background, you get this like weird temptation of like, I don't know what I'm shooting because the lens is on the right side and the LCD is on the left side, and you just can't like get the intricate shots and stuff like that. And that's actually the reason why I shot with the X-T3 when I'm shooting like photography for digital. But the only downside to the X-T3 is, we all know, the embody in-body image stabilization, which because I'm making YouTube videos, it is essential. Like when I went to my Chiba trip, I brought the XT4 instead of the XT3 because that in-body instability, in-body in-body image stabilization is much better and usable, and people who watch my videos probably know that. You don't want a shaky footage. My hands are shaky, but but that's like one of the reasons why I use the XT4. And I was basically mic fell again. So I was basically using the XT4 as a poor man's like video cam, and I actually did not like it. And I kind of wish the XT3 comes back to life on the XT5 with that, in-body image stabilization. And they basically released it actually in the XT5, and they sort of like shaved the weight because a lot of people hated the XT4 for being too heavy, and it's too heavy in my hands too. But there was one downside to the XT5, which I might make a video or might not make a video because so many people are already making a video on it, which is the increased megapixel count. And because I have a digital background, I understand it. And this is sort of like a trade-off that you have to make. The more megapixels, the ISO sort of like what you call performance decreases. It gets worse because there's like so many megapixels within that sensor that picks up like these random like sort of like artifacts in the dark actually, and you get noisy type unusable image. And that's what the XT5 is actually. The XT3 actually provides cleaner results and low light, while the XT5 actually performance really bad. But because it has that image in-body image stabilization, better autofocus, and yeah, animal focus, car focus, train focus, and stuff like that. I mean, for portrait shooters and stuff like that, I guess it would work really well. And probably in near future, I'm gonna swap from the XT3. I still have the XT3 actually, but I need to sort of like sell it because I'm running out of cash right now. So yeah, so that's actually my main reason of like switching to the XT5. And this is like really interesting because I rarely talk about digital stuff because this channel is related to like film. I tried to make it film oriented, but there are people out there who are interested in what I use when I'm shooting videos and stuff like that. And typically, if you're a film shooter, you have some kind of like digital camera, so some people might watch this video and stuff like that. So that's actually why I sort of switched to the XT5. I mean, this is like a really interesting topic that I want to go off topic and just in this video because I rarely talk about digital. But the great thing about the XT5 is if your backup is like, for me, XT4, from XT4 and beyond, they sort of like use these like MPW235 batteries, which are the larger capacity. XT5 uses the smaller capacity, and this is like one of the things that cut back on my sort of like, not cut down, but more like increased my sort of like time actually, which is like charging batteries and stuff like that, because the XT3 uses a different battery while the XT4 uses another battery, and these things start to pile up, and the charging time, I need to carry 2 chargers and stuff like that, was becoming cumbersome. And the XT5 uses the exact same batteries. It uses SD cards, which I can basically use. The XT3 uses SD cards too, but there's sort of like a shift going to C fast and stuff like that, which I don't want to purchase. Really expensive, available for XH2S and stuff like that. And there's these, like, if you have a main camera and backup camera, it's best if you can purchase 2 exact same cameras. But in my case, I make YouTube contents. I need a camera that I can see my face, if I'm recording. I tried YouTube using the XT3, but it kind of failed because I couldn't see myself. Like, how much was the difference in terms of price actually for the XT3 and XT5? Like, typically when you purchase like digital cameras, typically you sell your old one for the new one. And in Japan, actually, the XT3 used costs roughly $800 or $900, somewhere around there. And when you sell it, it's like roughly $700. And typically speaking, when I upgraded from the XT3 to the XT5, I paid roughly $1,100 or $1,200 actually. In the United States, you can buy a XT5 for $1,700. So yeah, in Japan actually, when you sell it, they sort of like pay less actually. So that's one of the gripes I have. But like, it's like $1,200, and this is like really interesting because the other manufacturers, I don't take that much interest in other manufacturers making like digital equipments like Canon, Nikon, and Sony, because up until recently, I realized how much their camera system costs. And typically most of their mirrorless cameras, the Canon RF series type of mirrorless camera, Nikon's like Z mount cameras, and Sony's Alpha series cost more than what 2.5 to 3 grand. And when you consider the whole kit and stuff like that, that's actually the main reason why I use Fujifilm, because the total cost, if you like get a typical set of like lenses, kit lenses and stuff like that, it's like much more cheaper, and you can basically do more with less money. And if we can produce amazing results with a cheaper camera, I mean that's the best, right? I mean, people don't look at your equipments, people look at what you do with their equipments. So, and I only paid $1,200 for that upgrade, which I think is worth it, well worth the money, instead of paying $2,500 on a Canon system. So yeah, and that's actually one of the reasons why at my workplace, one of my photographer friends uses the Alpha system and the Canon system, and he was like debating on like moving to a different system because the RF lenses are damn expensive, and the Alpha series, G Master series lenses are damn expensive. I'm like, people who do it as a living, how can you afford those like equipments? I mean, if it pays off, it's worth it, but yeah, it's big, bulky, and if you can't get the shot, it's not worth it. So yeah, that's basically it on answering questions regarding what my subscribers, followers wanted. Hopefully I sort of like answer all those questions, and probably I will do this Q&A session once in a while to see how it goes. I mean, keep the questions rolling because I'm ready to reply. And yeah, I had to like think of a way to like answer it in the shortest period possible, so I won't be wasting so many people's like time. But hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, I'm happy to reply. And yeah, leave any questions regarding like film, digital, photography life, living in Japan. Yeah, I'm happy to like answer those. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. We will see you next time. Peace out.